All right, we're live again for another episode of the Empowerment Platform, where our goal is to empower you to meet your goals, whatever they may be. And we're just here to really support you and get you through it. Tonight, I have with me a very special guest, Mr. Joe Hammond. How's
Mm.
it going, Joe?
Everything's going well, Ty. It's good to be with you, man. Thank you for having me, sir.
Thank you for joining me.
Mhm.
And tonight, we're going to be talking about adversity.
Mhm.
Joe has a deep, deep background, a lot of history. And I just wanted to share with you guys because a lot of you know my story. You know that I've overcome challenges and that every day is a continuous battle and we just overcome and we just move forward. So, Joe, tell us a little bit about your background, your history,
Mhm.
and what are you doing right now?
Well, Ty, I come from a challenging background of overcoming adversity over and over again. Starting back when I was 5 years old, my father left me. It was I remember it was Thanksgiving Day, and he said he'd be back on Christmas, and here we are. 40 some odd years later, and he still hasn't returned. And it's not that he's not on the earth anymore. It's just that he hasn't returned. So at a young age, I had to start to overcome certain things and start to realize that there's certain things in life that just can't stop us. We can cry about a whole lot of things in our lives, man, but that sun is still going to come up the next day. Whether I had a father or not, or whether he decided to come back or not. So I had to make some serious decisions in my life that weren't going to stop me from going ahead. Throughout my young life, I battled some health challenges, and I had about 5.5 years of kidney dialysis in my early 20s. I battled childhood obesity, some mental things, and then um, the childhood obesity led to kidney dialysis. Which what I was on for 5.5 years, and then eventually a kidney transplant before entering the police academy.
Wow,
There's been so many different things and so many different challenges in between that. Whether it been financial, whether it was health, divorce, and a whole bunch of other things. So overcoming adversity became something that I had to become good at. Because I realized that no matter what, that sun is still going to come up tomorrow, whether I'm hurting, whether I'm crying, whether I'm in good health or bad health. We still have to deal with the next day, man. And that's just the way it is.
for sure. So, was going into the police academy and joining the police force, was that always a goal of yours, a dream of yours? How did you get there?
Yeah, absolutely. It was always a goal of mine. But there were some things that were keeping me out. Even when I was on kidney dialysis, I was actually taking police exams to try to get hired.
Oh,
And I finally, it was so funny. A funny story was I was working for another company, and I actually told the boss that I was working for. I said, "Listen," I said, "I finally got this dream interview. I finally got the chance to go out here and do my thing as far as being a police officer." And they called me back for a second interview, and I'd like to go today on my lunch break. And I recall that the boss told me, he said, his name was Rob. He said to me, he said, "Listen," he said, "you can go, but don't come back if you go." And so at that point, I mean, what do? You have a mortgage, you have a house, you have kids and things like that. And what are you going to do at that point? You're going to give up your job,
right,
to go chase something that is not even in the hand. So at that point, I realized that I'm not sure I want to work for you anyway. I had given this guy, 4 years of my life, as a supervisor for where I was, helping him build up his company, helping, do the things that he needed to do. And when it was time for me to make my moves, this is when he really showed his true colors.
right,
So, going forward, when I finally got to the interview, I discovered that, they did want to hire me. The problem was I was still on kidney dialysis.
hmm,
And when they found that out, it was the city council and everybody, they all sat back and they said, well, how are you going to do this? And I said, I didn't expect to get this far, so I don't know. So, what happened was, I was just acting in faith. I was walking in faith. I was doing everything according to what my beliefs were. And when I kept taking the test, I wasn't worried about dialysis. I wasn't worried about the kidney. I wasn't worried about anything else. I just knew where I wanted to be and the steps I had to take to get there. So that's where we were. I didn't get the job that day, but
hmm.
I did wind up getting the job.
Absolutely. So, throughout your career, can you name some of the challenging times that you had once you became an officer? And I, I know it can be several, but just some of the ones that really stick with you that kind of you had to overcome and it makes you who you are today. Can you think of one or two situations?
Sure, sure. Being a police officer for almost 20 years, man, you see a lot of different things. There's not, I'll tell a lot of young guys who get on the job right now, there's not anything, there's nothing I haven't seen as a police officer. And that's not to brag, because it's not something that you always want to be proud of, but there hasn't been a call or a job that I haven't seen, from homicides to, to assaults to, anything that has to be involved in police work, you name it, I've been involved with it. And that doesn't give me, carte blanche to walk around with my chest out and say that, I'm the king and all these other things. But what I want to tell you is that all these things that you go through as a police officer sometimes are going to be challenging. And some of the things that stick out to me the most were the ones when a child comes up to me maybe 5 years later or 10 years later and says, "Hey, you don't remember me, but you saved me from choking, 15 years ago." Or, when somebody walks up to me in the street and they say, thank you so much for, for all the things you do. And I remember probably one of the most touching calls for me was, I remember I went to a job one day, and the father had custody of the child, and he was supposed to drop off the baby to the mom that evening. It was Super Bowl Sunday, and
Mhm.
he didn't show up. So I went to the job, and I knocked on the door probably for a good 15, 20 minutes. The car was outside and a whole bunch of other things. I just didn't have the opportunity to. I didn't have enough to.
Oh, did I lose you? Every time, ladies and gentlemen, when it's getting good.
There we are.
There we go.
And I'm back. So given the circumstances behind the door, I didn't have enough to go in. I went home that night, and when I came back the next day, I found out that the father had actually had a heart attack and collapsed on top of the child.
Oh, wow.
And that was something that stuck with me for a long time out of all those different calls, because when it comes down to children, innocent victims, and things like that, those are the things that hit home the most. So having been involved with a lot of innocent victim calls and a lot of things where people have lost their lives, it tends to wear on you over time. It does.
And how do you overcome that? How do you work through those things? Because I
Mhm,
know that mental health is starting to not carry the stigma that it did in the past,
mhm,
and more people are talking about the importance of mental health check-ins,
mhm.
getting assisted. Did you have to go that route, or were you able to overcome on your own mentally inside to make it through those tough situations?
Well, that's the funny thing, Ty. A lot of times we think, we feel. I know you're prior military yourself. We feel as if, we can just get over things on our own, right?
Right.
We're the ones that help people, so it's very hard for us to ask for help. It's very hard for us to go and get the help that we need. Sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's just pride, sometimes it's just, it's not that serious. But over time, these things do start to wear on you. So during a certain job like that, I didn't even realize how bad I was shaken up until somebody actually came to me and noticed the difference. One of my superior officers actually came to me and said, "Listen, I noticed that your voice changed on the radio. I've noticed that there's certain things that you're not thinking clearly about, and I'm concerned about you." And my response was, "Listen, I'm good, sir. I really am good." And I didn't realize how much help I needed until he forced me to talk to somebody. And when I started talking about the situation, when I started opening up about how I was actually feeling about what I saw, that's when I realized how much I was actually holding inside. And it was a good thing he actually ordered me to go, because I probably still wouldn't have gone. I'll be honest with you. I definitely wouldn't have gone if I wasn't ordered to go.
Absolutely. Now, fast forward to where we are today,
Mm-hmm.
retired,
Hmm.
and now you're a speaker. So,
Well, I'm not retired yet. I'm still
oh,
on. I'm
oh,
still on
you
the job. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Still
still
on.
on the job.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you
Mhm,
decided to go through Eric Thomas's speaking academy, and you
mhm,
got certified, so you're a certified speaker. Tell us a little bit about that journey and your why behind that.
mm.
What really pushed you in that direction to make you wanna do this?
Eric Thomas was always one of my mentors, man. Whether he realized it or not, I had been watching him for so many years, and you know, uh, there's a lot of things that go along with that. Over all the things I was going through, whether it was divorce, whether it was illness, whether it's financial problems and problems with child custody and things like that. There was always certain things that was going on inside my head where I turned, at that point to social media, after
Mhm.
God, and social media helped me out a lot because I was able to find different voices. I was able to to put my voice out there. And one day, man, I came across, Mr. Eric Thomas, who is the number one motivational speaker in the world, as you know. And for some reason we connected, and this is not even about, he would tell you and he would tell us right now, don't make it about me, don't make it about me,
Right.
and I'll be honest with you, it's very easy said, it's very easily said than done, much easily said than done, and when I say that he helped me, there were certain things that he helped me through because we identified, as each other. And, listening to certain things. Now, mind you, I listened to many other speakers,
Mhm.
many different people across the world, but there were certain things that made me want to be a part of this organization. And when I found out that he was giving speaking classes, and when I found out that he was giving speaking courses and certifications, I had to be there. It was a no brainer. So given that information that I had, I invested in myself, went to get certified, and it's been the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Oh, that's beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. And I like the way you use that word invested in yourself because
Mm,
oftentimes we don't, as individuals, when we look at something, we look at the cost, and cost is
mm,
not the right word.
no,
It's investment because when you invest in yourself, you get a return.
sure,
Something of value comes back to you, and
sure.
now it doesn't feel like, oh, I just paid my money to something.
Yeah, no. The biggest part about that, Ty, yeah, investing in yourself. Okay. Somewhere along the line, you're going to have to invest in yourself, whether it's college, whether it's programs, whether it's, investing into learning a different craft. You're going to have to invest in yourself somehow. And a lot of times we're quick to put our money into a Louis bag or, some new sneakers. We're quick to, put our money into our cars and houses. And, but when it comes time to invest in ourselves, that's where the true value comes. And the reason why I decided to do this and decided to, I was on social media just, venting. I was just on social media, just putting my voice out there. And before I know it, I was out there speaking. And, having a voice as small as it was, I decided to take that to the next level. I always saw myself like you said to me one time that you always wanted to be on the radio.
Yep.
So what's that going to take for you to be on the radio? You have to invest in yourself somewhere, communication classes, courses, and things like that, and eventually you're going to have to invest in yourself. So given the voice that I had and me being able to speak to people from my experience, I'm not preaching to you, I'm speaking from experience. When I talk to police officers about overcoming situations on and off the job, I'm speaking from experience. From start speaking to other people out there who are going through problems and they're going to need help. Now I stop where I'm not qualified. I'm not a clinical
Mhm.
specialist. I'm not a psychiatrist, and I can only help you to a certain level. And when it gets to that point, I promise you, I'll always point you in the right direction after me.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, is your niche talking to current police officers, former police officers, and other law enforcement?
Yeah, my whole niche is about first responders and military.
Okay,
Whoever needs the help, whoever needs the assistance. I always tell people on my page, reach out to me. Just reach out to me, because a lot of times, man, you realize that it was something that somebody said to you that stopped you from making that final decision.
absolutely.
And it could be at the very, very last minute. I mean, again, you are prior military, so you know how that ball bounces down the road. There's certain things where all of a sudden you come along and you come across somebody, you come in contact with someone, and you just happen to say the right words just in time. And being a hostage negotiator, I've learned that understanding and identifying with people is key.
Mhm.
We don't have to put ourselves in their position by saying, I understand what you're feeling, or I know what you're feeling. You really don't know what they're feeling. You may understand how it might feel, or you may understand how somebody may feel during a certain situation, even if you've been through it, but you can never tell somebody how they're feeling at that moment.
This is a kind of tricky question.
Sure, sure.
Do you feel that you gain more tools from law enforcement to use in speaking, or from
Mm,
speaking to speak to law enforcement? Because when you brought up the hostage negotiation, I can see all
mm,
kind of tactics,
mm,
things that you learn that you can utilize when you're
mm.
speaking. But then there's some principles from speaking that may go and help you go out and reach out to your niche. So, which
Yeah.
one do you think brings the most tools for you in your tool belt?
My experience brings the most tools. Period. Bottom line. There's no, we all know how to talk. We have conversations every day,
Mhm.
right? So if I ask you about the military, you can give me conversations for days. You can give me years worth of conversations, and all it would take for you to get up on stage or get in front of the microphone and say it is the training that goes involved with it.
Right.
Public speaking is what? The number one fear in the world. Okay. And, we've heard people say that before. It's not sharks, it's not
Yep.
skydiving. Public speaking is the number one fear in the world. So when you couple public speaking with your experience, it's that simple, and we're overthinking it. And sometimes we want to talk about things that we have no clue about. And I get it, because in the beginning, when I first started doing public speaking, I was speaking to kids, and not that I still can't speak to children. I'll always be able to speak to children from the experience that I have, but
Mhm.
why not speak about something I've been involved with for almost 20 years? That's
Right.
where most of my experience comes.
Got it. Beautiful.
Mm,
So, have you taken the DISC assessment? I'm pretty sure you have.
mm. I have taken the DISC assessment.
What is your superpower?
My superpower is a high S.
I would not have guessed it.
I'm a flight attendant, man. I like to help people. I'm pretty even across the board, and but overall I like to help people. That's where my strong point is. I go above and beyond to understand people. I go above and beyond to try to help people and do things on and off the job. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. This is not about money or fame or anything like that that may come along with it, and it will. Okay, I'm just letting you know,
Right.
but but what I'm saying to you is that um, I always wanted to help people ever since I was a child, ever since I was young. I always saw myself helping people some kind of way. And once my law enforcement career is over in a couple of years, I hope to continue helping people in any way I possibly can.
Oh, excellent. Wonderful.
Mhm,
And throughout your law enforcement career,
mhm,
what would you say, especially in the climate and the culture of
mhm,
everything that goes on? We get a lot of news and it's a lot of negative things against law enforcement from different backgrounds, different particulars.
mhm,
How have you been able to overcome that picture? Because
mhm,
I can imagine, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but I can see some people saying, "Oh, you in law enforcement, don't you? Who do you side with?" People try
mhm.
to get you to choose sides.
Yeah.
How have you overcome that negative picture?
I remember why I took the job in the first place. That's it. I took the job to help people. I took the job to serve people. Okay. This is exactly what law enforcement is. I remember when I was in the academy and it was day one and they're yelling in your face and your drill instructors are on, what that's about.
Yep.
And one drill instructor walked up to me and he says, "Mr. Hammond, why do you want to be a police officer?" And I was shaking and I couldn't get myself right. And I said, "To protect and serve, sir." And that's just a generic answer for them.
Mhm.
And at that point, they actually made me feel guilty about saying protecting and serving. And from that point on, I carried that with me for years until I got my own strength underneath my own feet. And I said, wait a second, no, this is exactly why I took this job. I wanted to protect and serve people who couldn't protect and serve themselves. That is the basis of the job. So when it comes down to all the rah rah on the outside, when it comes down to all the criticism that we get as police officers, when it comes down to even people who look at me and say, well, you're a black police officer. Okay,
Right.
that's even more challenging than people can actually realize. What do you do? How do you side? Who do you side with? I just side with right and wrong. If I see right, I see right. If I see wrong, I see wrong. Let's just call it what it is. And I've learned how to stay out of that light because I don't get involved in politics. I don't get involved with negative social media. I don't get involved with, negative police calls because listen, in every field, there's always going to be good and bad. I don't care where you are. There's bad bankers, there's
Yep.
bad lawyers, there's bad doctors. Unfortunately, police officers carry a heavier load with that because we're held to a higher standard and we're expected to handle ourselves a certain way. And I'm not mad at that. But at the end of the day, when I see a negative call or I see something on social media or I see the regular media come across and say something about police officers, I just realize they're just trying to sell newspapers. I
Mhm.
realize they're just trying to sell the media channel. It just is what it is. And I have been involved in negative media where people have actually accused me of things and it just never happened. It really never happened. So I've learned how to look at things through a different lens. If somebody approaches me and says, "Well, what do you think about this cop or what do you think what he did?" Usually my response is if it's not crystal clear, because the video doesn't lie sometimes, okay,
Yep.
but sometimes the video does. Um, if it's not crystal clear to me, my response is usually, I wasn't there. I really don't know. And this is what happens with our media today. We look at 30-second clips of a shot, 30-second video clips, and we make decisions based on 30-second clips. And having been a police officer in those situations, I can promise you there was always something leading up to that situation prior to that the media is not going to show you.
One great answer.
Yeah.
And it makes me think back to controversy sales.
Mhm.
However, they can get some kind of controversy out
Yeah.
of something and spin it,
Yeah.
then that's what sells and what what people feed into. It's
Yeah.
almost it's just they know what people want. They know they're looking for the negativity to feed it. So it's great that you stay out of there. I love the way you say right and wrong.
Right and wrong. That's it. It's right and wrong. I don't care what color you are. I don't care where you come from. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, you're right. Bottom line.
So as we spin now to more recent adversities that you've overcome, you were diagnosed with COVID-19
Yes, sir.
and you are almost back to 100%.
That is correct.
And we thank him for blessing you and keeping you through that period of time. How do you think you got COVID-19?
I got COVID-19. I think, okay, I got COVID-19 from a doctor's office that I visited. Now, it's so hard to tell. I haven't been, around so many people, haven't been involved with so many people, um, haven't had contact in the public and, the public eye. But the only thing that comes back to me is when, I recently had shoulder surgery from being injured on the job. And I had to have surgery. So I was out injured. And upon returning back to work, I was returned back to work light duty. I went to the doctor's office. And when I went to the doctor's office, COVID had just started.
Okay.
It was just beginning um, to really catch hold of America at this point and everywhere, throughout the world. And what happened was I got a phone call from the doctor's office. And they said, listen, Mr. Hammond, we think that you may have been exposed to COVID-19 because we found a case that took place in our office. Now, this was probably about 10 or 11 days after the doctor's visit. So, having understood that, I'm like, okay, well, that means I've been walking around with this thing for how long now? Nobody really knows. Nobody can tell me. And that's if I was even exposed. That's if I even had the actual symptoms, So as time went on, I called my doctor. I let my doctor know exactly what happened and what she said to me. She's been very good. She's been very active with me. Her response to me was, okay, well, we'll just monitor things as they go along. Do you have a fever? I said no. She said, do you have a cough? I said no. And at that time, those were the two main symptoms that people
Mhm.
were looking for. They wouldn't even talk to you. They wouldn't even test you. They wouldn't give you any kind of results or anything like that unless you had a cough or you had a fever. And at that point, I had neither. So, with that being said, I wasn't experiencing any of that, but it didn't mean I didn't have COVID-19 at that point, because as you know, there were certain people walking around
Right.
without visible symptoms, without signs, and they were passing this thing along. So having understood that, I just monitored it and monitored it and monitored it until some symptoms started to come, and that's when I started to get the little hairs on the back of the neck started standing up.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I know that it can be
yeah.
a scary thing, especially when it's new and not a lot of information around
Mhm.
it. And of course, with this as well, it got spun up real high. Uh,
Sure.
a lot of fear factor in this thing. And
Mhm.
you have a family. What did it do to you mentally when those hairs started to stand up? What was going through your mind at that point?
Well, when I got the phone call, I was at the dinner table. It's just me and my daughter. I live alone with my 16-year-old daughter, and I got the phone call. I didn't know what the phone call was about. I just saw the doctor's office called. I'm figuring they're calling me to give me my updates as far as the shoulder surgery, as far as X-rays and things like that. But I put the phone call on speaker. We're sitting down having dinner, and when that happened, this is when they said, "Listen, Mr. Hammond, we think that you've been exposed." So immediately at that point, Ty, I mean, there's so much fear going on at that point. I looked across the
Mhm.
table at my daughter, and she's like, "Oh, okay, okay." This is not something that you're looking to hear over dinner. And upon hearing it, there's a natural anxiety that kicks in. There's a natural fear that kicks in. I don't care who you are or what you've been through. There's something that's going to kick in at that point, because let's be real, people are dying.
Mhm.
And we don't want to. How could I say this? You're hearing a lot of stories about people not dying of COVID, but they're dying with COVID.
Right.
Okay, that doesn't matter to somebody with COVID. Okay, I don't want to hear, that doesn't make me feel better, because at this point nobody understands it.
Right.
Nobody knows what people are dying from or how people are dying. So when people are telling you, nobody's dying from COVID, or there's an acceptable number of people that are dying from COVID, that's not good enough for me. All I know is that I have symptoms. I want to get better. I
Mhm.
don't want to die. That's just the bottom line. And it's very hard to deal with that when you're watching people die, when you're watching people be hospitalized, when you're watching people, being put on ventilators. And again, at that point, you have people saying, some people shouldn't be put on ventilators. This is where this disease originated. This is not even, our government knows this and our government knows that. Again, I don't want to hear any of it. I
Mhm.
just want to know, how can I get better and how can I get back in the game? Period. Because
Wow,
other than that, I have fear. There's a
wow.
fear that kicks in.
And for you to hear you say that,
Mhm.
I remember when you were coming on Facebook talking the positive mindset,
Mhm.
have it. You kind of detailed us through this thing while you had it, and you said in one of it was either a phone call we were on or one of your Facebook lives that overcoming this starts in the mind.
Absolutely.
Walk us through
Absolutely.
that. Walk us
It,
through that.
it absolutely starts in the mind. It absolutely, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And here's the one thing I had to be careful of, Ty. I had to be careful when I was putting it on social media, that I didn't want to give some people some false hope. I didn't want to give people a false sense of a lull back into, okay, well, Joe Hammond's beat it, so we're good. No, that's Joe Hammond's not Superman. Joe Hammond has done things in the past mentally. He has overcome certain things mentally, and it has taken practice to get to this point to understand when you get hit with bad news, you don't completely crumble. How can I put that even easier for you? If you remember Roger Bannister, he was the first person to run the 4 minute mile, right?
Yep.
And before that, nobody was doing it.
Right.
Okay, nobody was running the 4 minute mile. But then after he broke the record for the 4 minute mile, everybody was doing it. Okay, well, I don't want to say everybody because Joe Hammond wasn't running a 4 minute mile. He's still not going to run a 4 minute mile. But what I'm saying to you is that everybody was doing it that were runners.
Mhm.
Everybody that was doing it that were in shape. Everybody was doing it that had been running for years. So when it comes down to me saying there's certain things that you can overcome, it's going to take practice. So when I got hit with this phone call about COVID-19, it didn't completely cripple me. But there is a natural fear. There is a natural concern. I don't care if I'm getting ready to kick a door down or if I'm searching a building at 4 o'clock in the morning. There's a natural fear that we have that takes over, that protects us from what we're about to do. Right. So, with that being said, the mental aspect of it was already conditioned way back during kidney dialysis. The mental aspect was already conditioned when I got the kidney transplant, when I failed out of the police academy, when my mother died. The mental aspect had been practiced for years and years and years. So that way, when something like this hit, I wasn't completely crippled.
Okay, and you had a fall you were able to fall back on what you had prepared or
Mhm.
what you had been through. You
Mhm.
prepared your mind to if something else comes, if the next thing because things will happen as we go and we live long enough, you
Yeah,
there'll be
yeah,
a situation. So
yeah.
you prepared and you have honed your skills in that area, okay, where this happened to me,
Mhm.
all is not lost.
All is not lost. And combined with a good spiritual life, combined with a good workout routine, combined with good mental and meditation and everything that goes along with it. When certain things happen to you and you get to this point, you realize that you don't have to be completely crippled by bad news. Now,
Mhm.
some people, having heard this, they're completely crippled. They go into an automatic fear.
Right.
There have been documented cases where a police officer has been shot with a 22 bullet and died. And whereas he unloaded his weapon into somebody else and the person lived.
Mhm.
It's the mentality that you have, that survival mentality, and it kicks in. And once you understand that, you're going to you're going to fall back on your highest level of training.
Right.
So when you go in, like you said, like you've learned this in the military, when you go through certain situations, your mindset can only go back to your highest level of training. So my highest level of training at that point was, listen, I overcome. This is what I do.
Mhm.
Okay. So no matter what they tell me, no matter what the doctors tell me, no matter what anybody tells me, I'm going to overcome. And that's just the bottom line.
Got it. So when re you got COVID-19, you're overcoming mentally. Physically, how was your body?
Shot, shot. My body was racked with pain. Um, my body was, the muscle aches, the fever had kicked in, the throat had kicked in. Everything that they were saying was kicking in. And again, when all those symptoms start to kick in, it's very hard to control something mentally
Mhm.
once you see the evidence of things that are taking place. I remember when my mom first had a stroke last year, and while I'm a positive person and I have a great mentality, I have a great positive energy. What I'm looking at a CAT scan that says you're not going to beat this.
Mhm.
Okay, when I'm talking to doctors and professionals, people who are telling me, and these are conversations I had to have with them, and I said, Doc, listen, I understand what you're saying. I understand you're trying to make everyone feel good, but I need the facts
Right.
based on your history, based on your knowledge, based on your training, which I don't have. What does this CAT scan say to you? If this was your mom, if this was your loved one, what does this CAT scan say to you? And at that point, I have to come into a reality based mindset and say, okay, this is what could happen. And this is what most likely will happen. But I'm going to have to find a way to keep a positive mentality even through that. So, understanding that all the symptoms I was getting, understanding that everything I was going through, I still had to find a way to get through that mentally. So when those body aches kicked in, when the
Mhm.
late night waking up choking, kicked in, when all those things kicked in, the fever, and having my daughter had to cover me up, and my lady had to cover me up and feed me, and all these other things, and not show weakness in front of them the best you can.
Right.
You're trying to understand that you need to get through this. You really need to get through this.
Wow. So now that you've overcome, and
Mhm.
we thank God for you overcoming this, what do you think you wish you knew before you got sick? Are there any things that you wish you would have done differently?
No, no, not really. I just the one thing I did do was I made sure I stayed away from negative social media. Okay. I made sure I stayed away from mainstream media, regarding this, especially when people didn't know what was going on. And when you speak like this, Ty, it may come across as arrogant. It may come across as, Mr. Know It All of people. But this is a way that you have to be able to speak to yourself. You have to be able to speak to yourself with a certain confidence in saying, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to overcome this, even if this situation doesn't work out in the end. It
Right.
doesn't mean, I didn't give up, no matter what. And the whole reason for me getting on social media about that topic, the whole reason for me talking about it to other people was to let them know that this is what you need to do. I'm speaking from experience. I'm not going to give you what you read on social media feeds. I'm not going to give you what some guy said because he wants to sell his newspaper. I'm going to give you exactly what I'm feeling. Now, does that mean that you're going to feel the same exact thing? No. Does that mean that you're going to go through the same exact thing the same way? No. But I'll be honest with you, Ty, there was so many people that were calling me and hitting me up in my inbox that actually had COVID-19, and they didn't say anything on social media. They didn't say anything on their, to their friends and their family. And we were walking around with this. And it was only then when we started to go public on social media that people started to open up more about it and was able to share different tactics, different techniques, all the home remedies that grandma did and grandpa did back in the day, rubbing you up with the Vaseline and the
Yep.
and the Vicks. And I'm sitting here sweating and carrying on. And listen, brother, I'll tell you, I was breathing over a pot, and I had the blanket over my head, and I'm sitting in here sweating like crazy. But that's the old school remedy of sweat it out. You'll
Right.
get through it. Sweat it out. So
With that
you
said,
have to be very careful about coming across as arrogant. And I hope that that's not what's being put out this way now.
right. And when I listened to you, I didn't feel that at all. I felt like you were someone that had it and that had a certain mentality.
Mhm,
I think when people say, because I hear it, oh, you guys are arrogant,
mhm,
know it all, you cocky, but there's a certain mentality that if you want to win,
mhm,
if you want to overcome, if you want to be a high level achiever, the 1% or whatever you want to call it,
mhm.
there's a certain mindset that you have to have. And it starts with, I'm going to win.
Yeah, yeah. We spoke the other day about Michael Jordan, The Last Dance.
Yep.
And there was a lot of people who didn't know that side of Michael Jordan. They didn't know what his mentality was. They didn't know how he treated his other players. They didn't know how he came across on the court. And to the wrong people, it may come across as arrogant. But in order for him to win what he won, he has to carry himself a certain way. That's just the bottom line. Whether you like it or not, whether you can handle it or not, the one thing he said was really, really key. Um, and if I can, I don't want to misquote, but he said, somebody said to him, "Hey, Mike, there's no I in team." But Mike said, "Yeah, but there's I in win."
Yeah.
Okay? So, so you have to understand this. is that you have to make sure you're doing your part on that team or wherever you are. You have to make sure that you're doing your part when it comes down to taking care of yourself,
Mhm.
getting through COVID. You have to make sure you're taking care of yourself. That's when that I has to kick in, because without that I wouldn't be here for my daughter. I wouldn't be here for anybody else, my son and the family. I wouldn't be here. I have to take a mentality of saying, you know what, at some point, I have to put myself first.
Right.
You have to put yourself first. And it may come across as arrogant, but if you don't put yourself first, if you don't put the oxygen mask on first in the plane, you can't help anybody else. And that's a very hard thing to get across to people sometimes. And again, like I said, it may come across as arrogant, but if you really want that mentality, if you really want that dog, if you really want to win, there's going to come a time when you have to take you out of the whole picture, and you have to say, you know what, this is what the vision is. This is what the goal is. And in order for me to get there, this is what I have to do.
Wow, wow. So during this, did you get any formal medical treatment, or was it all you had to just go through it on your own at home?
Well, what they told me was if I wasn't experiencing certain symptoms, there was no need for me to go to the hospital. And this
Okay.
is what they were saying to people throughout that whole time. Don't go to the hospital unless you really have trouble breathing and you can't get a hold of it. Because at that point, I mean, if you can't breathe, I mean, if you ever gone without air for about 3 minutes, my friend, you that's a whole different ball game.
Right.
But having understood that, okay, I'm not sick enough to go to the hospital because I can still breathe.
Mhm.
Okay, that means I'm good. I have a chance here. I have to keep doing what I'm supposed to do in order to maintain that. Now, I was always under the phone call saying, listen, Joe, if you feel like you have to go to the hospital, please go to the hospital. This is what was happening, Ty. So many people were waiting. So many people were, that I know personally, were waiting until it got so bad in their lungs. They waited until things got so bad because they just thought it was the average cold, right? When I got this, it was during allergy season. So the
Yeah.
stuffy nose didn't mean anything to me. The scratchy throat didn't mean anything to me until that trouble breathing, that difficulty breathing kicked in. Okay. And that's when you start to realize, okay, this is serious. So as far as the care of the medical professionals, they instructed you, stay home,
Mhm.
quarantine yourself, make sure you stay away from people. Now I'm home with my daughter, and thank God, she's 16 years old. My main concern was her, but she tested negative, and that debunks a whole other story about how people is. If you're around them, you're going to get it. If you spend time with some people, you're going to get it. Now, be smart. Okay, that doesn't mean go have a party. That doesn't mean go out and I said someone the other day, start licking railings and things like that, acting crazy. But what I'm saying to you is that you have to use wisdom when it comes to it. So
Right.
no, I wasn't under direct care from a medical professional, but I was under that phone call care every single step of the way.
Okay. And now, for anyone that has it, that has overcome it, and how do they begin to get their life back? What should they take from this to better their life for the future?
Slowly, get your life back slow. That was one of the things I had to realize too when I got up, when I was laying in bed. The one thing I had to do was get up. Okay, you're going to have to get out of bed. As much as I didn't want to get out of bed, as much as it hurt, as much as it was uncomfortable, I had to get out of the bed.
Mhm.
And I'm going to tell people right now who, if you have COVID-19, okay, if you've gotten sick, if you know somebody, you have to get up out of the bed, okay, because what happens is this attacks your lungs, and if you lay there, it's going to continue to attack your lungs. Now you feel justified in laying down, right? Because when you're sick, what do people tell you to do? Go lay down. Let's rest. Let's get that. And you have to have that balance also. You have to make sure you're resting and sleeping at night, but you also have to make sure that you're getting up the next day, the following day, and moving around, getting that fresh air in your lungs, breathing exercises, stretching, keeping the body moving. One of the things that I kept doing, and I still have it right now, is hot liquids. The virus doesn't like hot. The virus doesn't like heat. These were things that were facts. This wasn't something that people said or people passed on to you.
Mhm.
It was facts. So what I did was every night, I did my breathing techniques over the stove, a hot pot of water, and
Yep, yep.
inhaling orange peels and lemon and honey and ginger, fresh ginger. And these were the things that I was doing. Also, I kept a hot cup of tea next to me. It was homemade tea. I stayed away from the caffeine. Um, I just made hot water with lemon and honey. That's it. These are the things I kept flushing through my body. And again, this is not medical advice. Okay. I'm not a medical professional. If you have trouble breathing, go to the doctor. If you have trouble breathing, call your medical professionals, go to the hospital and get it taken care of. I'm not trying to put fear in you, but I'm also not trying to put a quick fix in everybody's
Mhm.
brain either. You have to use wisdom with this whole thing. So as you're getting over COVID, the one thing you want to do is make sure you get back into life slowly. I was doing 30 seconds on the elliptical machine. Now I'm up to 3 minutes.
And I
Okay.
remember hearing you talk about that.
And 30 seconds, man, is, people will, they'll laugh at you, clown you, and everything else. But 30 seconds felt like a lifetime, when you couldn't breathe, and it was a slow process. I would do 30 seconds, then get off. And then I'd do what I got to do another 30 seconds and then get off, and then slowly but surely. And I made a calculated decision this week. This is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go any further than that. I'm not going to go past that. I know when there will come a time when I have to push myself a little further than that. But what I need to do is make sure I'm getting back in slowly. So that's the advice I want to give to anybody who's going through right now. And the whole reason for me sharing this is to help other people.
And you talked a lot about wisdom tonight, a
Mm,
lot about wisdom. As the country begins to reopen itself back up,
mm,
what's your opinion on the openings? Should we stay closed a little bit longer? Should we slow it down? Especially being in law enforcement
mm.
and having this, where do you stand? How do you see it? And wisdom is the key word here, but just your thoughts on it.
My thoughts are this, Ty. Eventually the country has to open back up. It just is what it is, and we know that. But if you've ever had a plumbing problem at your house and the hot water heater went out, right? What's the first thing they do? They shut off the water.
Yep.
Now, when they turn the water back on, what do they tell you to do? They tell you to open the pipes slowly, because if not, you're going to get air in the pipes. You're going to get that knock, 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 and then you're going to cause more damage. And I don't think that, opening everything up at a rapid rate right now is the smart thing to do. I think it's just like anything else. You can't fix 10 years in 10 minutes. You can't turn the Titanic around in one swoop. You have to make sure that you're doing things the right way. And, I'll give you an example. Like today, I took my daughter for a little ride just to get her out of the house. And I can tell you, man, people on the road are lawless. It's just, I mean, I've watched people, man, speeding and, doing all these things that are going on in the world right now, that on the highways and byways. And they're just, breakneck speeds. And okay, I get that, because the law enforcement officers haven't really been enforcing that much, because why? We were afraid also to have that contact with people.
Right.
In order for us to pull a car over, we have to have physical contact with people. Sometimes we have to take their license, which we don't want to touch. We have to talk with them, which we don't want to do, because at the end of the day, we have to go home to our families, right?
Right.
But I can tell you this today, with the country opening back up, oh, Popo was out there. They were out there, and I saw a lot of cars pulled over on the side of the road today, and it was a rude awakening for some people who had been getting away with certain things for the last month or two. So if when it comes down to opening up the country, when it comes down to opening things up, do I believe that certain things are essential? Absolutely. There were always things that I thought that were essential that shouldn't have been shut down, but it's not up to me. I don't make those decisions, and that's bigger than me. But as far as getting back into things, absolutely. I think it's time for us to start opening things up, but do it wisely.
Yeah, using that wisdom,
Yeah.
just and I think now and in the future, we're gonna look at a lot of things differently. A lot
Mm,
of things that we haven't thought about as far as health and safety. We'll be looking at them. We'll be taking more precaution. And if people just do right by people,
mm,
I think things open up quite nicely. I think about even with pizza delivery, now they seal it, the box,
mhm,
and they say,
mhm.
"Oh, it hasn't been touched."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why haven't they been doing that all along?
I'm not mad at that. I don't want people touching my pizza, man. Just the
Come
whole,
out, just
you know, th-
drop it in the
I-
box to seal it, please.
yeah, I think there's a lot of things that are here to stay. And it's okay. A lot of things are here to stay. I walked in the store the other day and I had a mask on. And I remember when we used to have masks on, that was just a terrible thing to see. Like all of a sudden, like, what's wrong with them? Or we'd walk to the airport and some people would be having a mask on.
Right.
Now we see that has become normal. And this is, unfortunately, some of it is going to be a new normal. If somebody's walking around 5 years from now with a mask on, nobody's going to question it. They're just going to look at it and say, I get it. I know exactly what that is. So A lot of people talk about, I want to get back to normal. I want to get back to the way things were. But to be real with you, man, a lot of people didn't even like their normal. So, this is the perfect opportunity for you to change. This is a perfect opportunity for you to make some decisions and to do some things different. And most importantly, for you to get closer with God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time in home, a lot of things could be fixed. And I hope that
Mhm.
everyone listening that you take advantage of the time.
Mhm.
Netflix
Absolutely.
and chill is cool for a little while, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of business that could be done, personal development, business development, spouse, husband, get together,
Yeah,
connect
I
with.
think there's a lot of people who have done that, Ty. Like there's a lot of people who realize how much time they were missing at home.
Mhm.
I've learned a ton about my daughter spending time with her at home. A lot of parents have had an opportunity to have spoken to some fathers who have had an opportunity to, reconcile some relationships. And on the other hand, some people have had a rude awakening of a relationship that wasn't real in the first place. So there's always a flip side to everything. There's good and bad to everything, and hopefully more people will experience the good that are going through this thing, and more people will take the time to to self-assess and really realize what's important in life, and realize that no matter what, there's only one person in control. That's it, period.
That's it. What resources do you think people should lean on in this time of crisis? I want to shy people away from mainstream media news as much as possible, just
Mhm,
because you can pick your political
mhm.
leaning and just turn to that channel. It's going to feed you everything
Sure.
that you want. What resources are out there that are trustworthy that we can lean on, that we can get real data, real information?
My thought would be experience. People with experience. The mainstream media, man, is like you said. If I'm a Democrat, I'm going to find a Democrat channel, and that's what I'm going to watch.
Mhm.
Okay. If I'm a Republican, I'm going to watch a Republican channel, and that's what I'm going to watch. And like you said, they'll feed you what you want to hear at that point. But when it comes down to certain things like this time, my advice would be get the experience from people who have the experience. There's so many people out there. There's people who have reached out to me and say, Joe, what did you experience with this? People who have reached out to other people who have overcome it, or people who haven't overcome it in their family members, and what they saw and what they didn't see. So the best experience right now, the best teaching is experience, as far as I'm concerned. The media. I have my opinions on the media. I haven't watched the news. I don't know how many years, because there's certain things that just go on, man, and you start to realize that people are just trying to sell their channel. Okay, sex sells, violence sells. But when you start talking about all the good things that people are doing, that's usually at the tail end of the news. It's usually in the back end of the newspaper. It's a small article, on social media, and a lot of people aren't doing it. So my advice would be, stay away from mainstream media, man. I'm sorry. It just is what it is. And having been a victim of mainstream media a time or two in law enforcement, I can tell you for a fact that that's my experience. Stay away from
Got it.
it.
So, Joe, as you move forward in life, you have overcome so much. What are just 2 to 3 takeaways or tips that you can give the people when it comes to their suffering, whatever situation,
Mhm.
they're impacted by something today? What are 2 or 3 things that you can tell them that will help them overcome?
Well, the one thing that you need to realize, Ty, is that no matter what, that sun is coming up tomorrow. No matter what, you can be upset, you can be crying, you can be ill, you can be sick, and a whole bunch of other things. People around you could have died, but the sun came up this morning, and it's going to come up tomorrow. That's one thing about it. It's very, very consistent. Okay, it's always going to shine. And having understood that in my life, the one thing I realize is that no matter what, I have to keep going forward. We can't change the past. Okay, and we don't have control over the future. But what we can do is make sure we start walking in the right direction of what we want our future to look like. Carry yourself the way you would want to be, that you would want people to carry themselves around you. Treat people the way that you want people to treat you. And if there's certain things that you need to take away from this experience right here today that we're in, is listen, we're all in the same boat here, man. And I know that some people have said, yeah, we're not in this. No, we're in the same boat. We just have different tasks on the boat.
Right.
Okay, somebody's got to row. It's a big ship. Somebody's got to cook. Somebody's got to clean the boat. Somebody's got to steer the boat. But at the end of the day, the one thing that this COVID-19 has showed us is that no one is exempt. Okay, I know doctors that have died. I know lawyers that have died. I know couples that have died, husbands and wives. Grandparents together. So the one thing that we could take away from this is nobody's exempt, man. If nobody's exempt, we are all in this together, and that's not just a social media meme. We really are in this thing together. And for some of us, we really need to take a hold of that and realize that our tomorrow is not promised. And we really need to start taking hold of that.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that I took away and really noticed that this thing stopped the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a neighbor who's in her 90s. She's never seen it. So this has to show you something. No matter how smart you think you are, I'll close down the schools. No
Yeah,
matter how healthy you think you are, there won't be any gyms. No matter how pretty you think you are, guess what? All the hair salons and all the nail salons are closed. Okay, all the schools are closed. No matter what, the world was shut down. And I don't care, again, like I said at the top of this broadcast, I don't care where it started. I don't care where it originated, what country it came from, or, that's not my problem to fix. And I'm sure through investigation, people will find out where everything started and all that. But that's above and beyond Joe Hammond. And it's also above and beyond you. And if you have some information, then please share it. But I will say this: the world was shut down as we know it.
yep.
Facts.
No matter what plans you had.
Facts. Vacations done.
Done.
Business is done. And it's sad to say for some people, but overall, we really need to learn from this.
So as we draw down, we're almost to our hour.
Yes, sir.
How can people connect with you? How can we support you?
You can find me on Facebook under Joe Hammond, under Instagram under JH Overcomes, and also you can find me on my webpage at www.jhovercomes.com. And you'll find out that my main purpose is to help first responders and anybody, overcome their adversity both on and off the job.
Got it. And Joe, I got one more question for you.
Sure.
Having had a kidney transplant and having been through dialysis, when you first found out that you got COVID, did it enter your mind that, okay, I'm one of the people that are at risk?
Yeah. Knowing that I'm on lifetime medication.
Yep.
So I have underlying conditions. I'm on lifetime medications, which weakens my immune system. I'm on immunosuppressant medications. So my mentality throughout this whole COVID-19 thing was, okay, I really got to be careful. So when I got the phone call, it really wasn't much of a shock. I was hoping and praying that it wouldn't happen to me, but immediately I thought, okay, is my kidney in danger? I've had the kidney transplant for 20 years. So it was a natural thought. And having understood the underlying circumstances and everything that went along with it, again, it was fresh, it was new, it was scary. It was taking over the world. It was the next Ebola. It was, all these things that go along with it. There was definitely a fear that came along with asking that question about, is this going to affect my kidney? Is this going to affect me? So, yeah, to answer your question, hopefully I did. It really was a big concern for me, and realization kicked in when I said, I can get this thing, and I did.
Wow. And now you're 100% clear. Have they, or when you found out, because you were retested and you got cleared, now do they believe you can get it again? Because that's another question.
Still undetermined, man.
Still undetermined.
And that's another thing, man. There's so many, like you said, you get one thing, I get the next. The only thing I can say to you is this: if you can get it, make sure you take care of yourself. If you can't get it, make sure you take care of yourself. It just is what it is. I don't want people to, once you do overcome it, and when you do overcome it, don't carry around the threat or the fact that I'm never going to get it again, or I could possibly get it again. Just live your life. Just live your life, because there's certain things in this life that we can't control. And that's probably one of them. And especially when people are not giving us the right answers.
Right. And I think we still have some time to go before all the answers will come out. It's just going to take time.
That's all it is. And
even with vaccines they're producing and coming, you still got to use that, take time, see how it affects people. We just don't know. And all we can do is stay prayed up. Remember that his plan is always greater, always the right plan, and we will be fine.
Live your life, man. Live your life.
Live your life. So, Joe, what's next? What's next for you?
Well, I have a podcast coming out in June. I'm going to be starting the podcast up in June. And I'm sure you guys will be supporters of it. Hopefully,
Uh,
and I just pray, man, that I can help as many people as I possibly can in this lifetime. My vision is just to make sure that I can always leave, something good behind. I want to leave this world better than when I found it. And however that may be, whatever God has me doing, whatever venue, whatever avenue, then so be it. I just want to be a good servant, a faithful servant. And when it's time for me to rest my head one day, I want to be able to say that I did good. I did good. That's all I want. That's all I hope for, brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are at our hour mark. As always, we want to be respectful of everybody's time. We thank you for joining us tonight. It was such a power packed session for me because, like I've told you before we even jumped on, just knowing and hearing stories of how people overcome those things strengthen us because I can look at you and I can say, hey, Joe did this. Joe was able to speak life into his situation, speak life into mine. Now I have a stronger will to know that there are people who can beat this thing as well as other things, and we can move forward. And that's the whole purpose of the empowerment platform, is to empower you to overcome your situations, to
Amen.
know that you can beat them, to know that you can keep going, keep moving, and nothing can stop you. Well, only thing that can stop you is if you stop yourself, if you never move, if you never walk. And just to think about, Joe, when you said you got to get up every day, you got to keep moving. Even when you got to rest, you still got to get up because a lot of people lay down and let it go.
Amen.
And instead of a disease overcoming them, they overcame themselves.
Amen.
They checked out. So,
Amen.
ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. We will see you all next week. I appreciate your support and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, sir.